Breaking news, guys. Flu season is in, and you gotta get your flu shots. So, yeah.
Did you get your flu shot yet?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, well, I was just wondering, because it's flu season all year round, it's good to take extra precautions to prevent it.
Yeah.
I think I have the Black Plague.
Whoa.
Speaking of prevention of the Black Plague, I wonder how people in the medieval period used treatments to prevent it.
Okay, let's talk about the medical impact of the bubonic plague.
How did the limitations of medical knowledge and practices in the 14th century impact the understanding and treatment of the bubonic plague? By Chia Amin,
Fiona Lee,
Sarah Nguyen,
and Caroline Nan.
Hello!
For our first source, we decided to use In the Wake of the Plague by Norman F. Cantor. It's a book about information of the bubonic plague itself and the many treatments and symptoms that came along with it. Some of the many disadvantages that came along with the book is the vagueness of treatments and how it goes into depth of how it affects society itself.
Our second source is Doctoring the Black Death by John Aberth. It's a book that goes into depth about the medical response that medieval Europe had. Its advantages are that it provides us with a lot of data relating to the treatments, symptoms, and even the cures. The only disadvantage is that it's overwhelming with large amounts of information. Our next source is an article entitled The Black Death's Effects on Medicine and Medical Practices by Jackson M. Hoyle. It was a positive source as it provides us with context on treatments and has very good information. However, the disadvantage was that it didn't go into much depth about treatments that we would have liked to know more about.
So, for our online source, What's Wrong with Medieval Medicine by Peregrine Horton, it provided us with plenty of context about medieval medicine, but it didn't really go into depth about the Black Plague itself.
The plague spread from Central Asia to Europe primarily through trade routes and Genoese ships. It caused the deaths of an estimated 25 to 50 million people, which was potentially one-third of the European population. The disease had significant social, economic, and religious impacts, which contributed to the Renaissance and the decline of feudalism. It was often carried by parasites found on rodents, specifically the black rat, but once it was contracted, there was a 4 out of 5 possibility that the person would die within 2 weeks. Similar to influenza, symptoms within the first stage often started off with a high fever. By stage 2, it progresses into black welts and swollen lymph nodes in the groin and armpit area, which was one of the most common symptoms. Black welts often varied in size, ranging from 1 to 10 centimeters, all extremely painful and accompanied by nausea. By the third stage, respiratory failure occurs, known as pneumonia. Antibiotics had a chance of curing the disease if found within the first 2 stages. By the third stage, odds were fairly low.
In medieval times, medicine was more of a belief rather than a fact. Therefore, circling back to our question, the limitations in medical knowledge impacted bubonic plague treatment because they relied on cultural beliefs and not solid facts. Religiously, many people would believe that illness was a consequence of sins, which was mostly influenced by the Christian church itself. For instance, the doctrine of signatures was a crucial theory. However, another example is the theory of humorism, which guided doctors to balance out the body fluids. Another form of a cultural treatment would be the drilling of one's skull. If you were sick, doctors would drill a hole in your skull to release the demons. And as a result of the limited medical knowledge, prevention was valued most, as opposed to treatment. That was until the Black Plague. Understanding of the anatomy, just like treatment, was not as valued. Since official medical schooling wasn't really a thing, anyone could have been a doctor, with or without schooling. The lack of understanding and the limitations in the medical field led to the misunderstanding of the plague and its treatments. How, you may ask? For example, many doctors at the time didn't understand or have any concept of what a germ was. That's right, a germ. As mentioned before, cultural and religious beliefs did play a huge role when it came to such treatments. For example, the theory of humorism came into play with bloodletting, specifically leeches. Surgical procedures like phlebotomies and lobotomies were also put to use. Potions were another failed attempt at treatments, however, they were mostly thought of as magical protection. Despite the ineffective treatments, there were some effective treatments. Drug therapies like opium were used for anesthetics. Wine was used to clean out the wound created by the plague, also known as black masses on the body. Cauterization was used to burn the flesh. Nonetheless, the lack of medical knowledge and practices led to the inefficiencies in these treatments.
Moving on to treatments based on social class, it was a known fact that the rich would get more access to treatments rather than the poor, despite the fact that they were more vulnerable to the plague. To be real, one thing that I can't stress enough is that they drank each other's urine as a theoretic alternative.